Hey, creative. Are you ready to discuss profits, the money, the ways to make it happen? The Profitable Creative Podcast is for you, the creative, how you define it. Videographers, photographers, entrepreneurs, marketing agencies, you get it. CEO of Core Group and author Christian Brim interviews industry experts, creative entrepreneurs, and professionals alike who strive to be creative and make money at the same time. Sound like you? Tune in now. It's time for profit.
Welcome to another episode of The Profitable Creative, the only place on the interwebs where you will learn how to turn your passion into profit. I am your host, Christian Brim. Special shout out to our one listener in Alpharetta, Georgia. Clearly, I've never been to Alpharetta. Don't even know where it is. Joining me today, Will Dickinson with Visual Campfire. Welcome to the show, Will.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So the first thing that kind of came off the top of my head is the name of your company, Visual Campfire. So how did you come up with that name?
Yeah, I languished about it for some time, to be honest, because the names all matter a lot to me. But like for me, like storytelling is kind of a buzzword nowadays, but yes. I think it's a buzzword for a reason. I always loved being a storyteller. I loved stewarding other people's stories. And if you really go back to like the genesis of stories and its place in human history, a lot of it started around the campfire. It's in our, I believe stories are in our DNA. Like when we were hunter-gatherers, like they would go out and come back and bring stories from the hunt. We have our creation myths and our stories. And then long before written history, we had oral history, and that's all there was. And that was all done in the form of stories. And so if you take that and then you combine that with like the magic you feel when you sit around the campfire and connect with people, I was like, oh, I feel like that really encapsulates like when you steward somebody's story well, it feels like you're sitting around a campfire, like connecting in that real genuine way.
I love that analogy. We have a similar item on our meeting agenda, and we call it Campfire to discuss client stories. Like, how did we improve or enhance the lives of our clients? That's a bullet point on our weekly meeting, because I believe that community is I didn't define it this way. Perry Marshall did. He said, community is a set of agreed on stories.
Mm.
That's what makes a community, is that everybody knows the story. Oh, they know the story about Will, the time he, broke his leg when we were on the hike. I mean, like and I'm like, that's really true. Like, a community at its core has a set of collected stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the idea of a campfire. So how did you get into this gig?
Oh man. So on the subject of being a storyteller, my story always challenges my skill at being one because it has been very, very long and windy. So I'll try to make this palatable.
There are no straight lines in nature.
Yeah.
I was thinking that this morning, like only humans think that there are straight lines. There are no straight lines.
So creatively, right out of high school, I was fortunate to have a band start doing well. We were a screamo band, and this will age me, this will date me, but like we started to get big on MySpace. And so, I'm almost 40 now. So MySpace was the place to be at the advent of social media and all of that. And like no one told me this, but we did a really good job of like grassroots marketing there. We were constantly connecting people. We were constantly sharing our stories, like really being engaging there. And then we had a great product. We had great music. Like we worked hard. The band was full of really talented people. And so we kind of had that perfect storm of what you needed to break through back then. Started to do that. We did well, and then kind of classic musician story. We started to break through, and then the band broke up. I spent the next, 6 or 7 years getting into trouble, trying to recreate that success, all of that, really having nothing to show for it. And then out of the blue, I was washing dishes in kitchens and stuff, and a buddy called me and was like, "Hey man, this is going to sound really weird, but I was like praying about this and heard you'd be really good at it. Do you want to come intern with me?" I was like, "Absolutely. This sounds great." And so I went and borrowed some clothes from my dad because I had no real person clothes at the time.
Yes.
And showed up to this meeting and pretended like I was a producer, and it turns out I had a knack for it. And so came on board with that company, started producing commercial work
Was this audio production or video?
This was commercial video production.
Okay.
Sorry, I kind of fast forwarded that little important detail. But,
so did you pick up skills before then, or were you raw?
No, it's, the musician to video producer and filmmaker pipeline is real. It utilizes a lot of similar skill sets. Even like your nonlinear editors are very similar to your, digital audio workspaces, I think is what DAW stands for. So, and then as far as like writing music, sharing stuff, connecting with people, if you can abstract that into like a visual story, the same ideas are there. Is like, you got to have an intro, you got to have a hook, you got to have a bridge, kind of like there's an arc to all of it. And so if you can kind of figure out the soft skills, then the rest of it's technical. So I started learning how to be a producer and an editor. And so producing is very similar to managing a band and all of that. You're just getting a whole bunch of talent that's probably kind of hard to work with into one room and making them all and keeping them all happy.
Yes.
That's kind of a joke. I get to work with a lot of people that are really great to work with, but creatives are historically opinionated, as they should be, because their whole life is based on their taste and their perspective.
Yes.
But so producing was a kind of natural crossover, and then editing was too. And then from there, I started to kind of reverse engineer all of the other skill sets. So whether it was lighting, cinematography, directing, any of that. And so within about a year of being a producer and an editor, I also learned all the other skill sets. So I kind of became a one-person band where I'd be a guy that you could pack a camera and a drone and a mic into a backpack and drop me anywhere in the world, and I can grab a story. And so
you were like a ranger. You were the video ranger. I'm giving you that moniker now.
Oh, I'll take it. not to be an insult to the real rangers out there who are probably infinitely more jacked than I am, but so, I did that for 6 years and was fortunate to lead, some really amazing studios in Oklahoma City. And then I was in Mexico doing a doc project for a sustainable clothing brand. I picked up what we think was like a little parasite there, and then came back, and the medicine they gave me when I got back into the States, I had this freak allergic reaction to, and it like straight up crippled me overnight. And so went from doing all of that as a career to losing it all overnight, kind of having to redefine myself, and ended up in the startup marketing sector for about 5 years. So wait
a second. So I'm going to pause for a second. So was this a permanent disability or was this a temporary disability?
It was unclear. The original prognosis was it was probably going to be permanent. People that had that kind of reaction tend to not recover, but it was wholly unclear whether or not I was going to recover, and then on what kind of timeline, whether it was going to be years, months, years, decades, whatever.
Right.
And so ended up in the startup marketing space for about 5 years. Got to do some cool stuff there. Got to, I ended up doing content licensing and content marketing for one of the bigger VR companies in the world. So like anytime somebody made VR title, they came to us. And so when BBC did Doctor Who, I got to be the guy that cut the marketing deal for that. We did Predator with Foxnet, a lot of other stuff. So did that for a while. And then that company got acquired in, I think it was 2021. Then I was at a health tech startup based out of Austin. Was there until last May of 2024. And then I left there, felt like my health was in a decent enough place. I miss telling stories. I love it. It's one of the things I feel like I'm put on this earth for. And so I bowed out of the startup and launched Visual Campfire in May of 2024 in earnest.
So that had to be a big leap, going from working for others to starting your own gig. What was your thought process there?
It was a lot of things. First, how'd I do? Other than skipping over the video production detail, how was that for 10 years of highs and lows?
That was excellent.
Thank you.
You did well.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, it was a big leap. Like, I try not to be a preachy person, but I also live based on a faith. And so I had a faith in God that that's what I was supposed to be doing, that it was going to be okay one way or the other. It's been scary and terrifying and great and all of that since then. But then also, like, I have been fortunate to number two for some really talented entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So like I've gotten to see people that are really good at what they do. And I was always the guy, they did all the business stuff and I executed on the product. And specifically in a video context, I'd run some, high level studios. We'd had, the last studio I was at when I got hurt had Oracle as a client. They were doing stuff all around the world with Fortune 1 clients. I've been, I've won at a film festival, got some other awards and all that stuff. So like, I knew I could create the product. And from, the last 5 years of marketing, I knew at least like how to help people give the product legs. Mm-hmm. And so from there, it was like, okay, if I can figure out all the entrepreneurship stuff, then I can do this myself. And it's been super hard. Obviously, being an entrepreneur is one of the hardest things I've ever done. But it's been really rewarding. So I think I did have the confidence of like having seen other people do it, and at least been able to like mimic them and find people with more experience than me when I'm like falling apart and need some help.
So what in the last year, what has been the biggest challenge making that transition to entrepreneur from being number two to being number one?
Yeah. Oh man, it's a good question. There's been so many of them. I don't quite know what the biggest one is. I would maybe say like my own mindset and mentality. Like I tend to catastrophize and dwell on mistakes, and you can't really do that. Like I remember reading in a newsletter like 8 years ago, like some of the most successful business owners have a short memory for their own failures and their own mistakes. Like you can't move forward if you're stuck in the past. Like you've got to analyze the past enough to not repeat your mistakes. Right. Obviously, you got to learn. Like there's got to be some heuristics there. But if you dwell on it, you're screwed, because you're gonna make mistakes as an entrepreneur. You're gonna mess up, and you're gonna have to recover. And so I think one of the biggest challenges has certainly been getting out of that like catastrophe spiral that I can go down. Yeah,
I think, yes, that's an interesting thing to unpack, because I would say that catastrophizing is not typically a entrepreneurial characteristic, in the sense that we're usually the opposite. Like we think everything's going to be great, right?
Yeah.
But certainly when failure does hit you as an entrepreneur, I think it's easy to slip into that spiral because of the fact that there's not a great support network for entrepreneurs, right? Like there's not
Mm-hmm.
uh, a help group for the most part to go and share your problems. And speaking about those problems with non-entrepreneurs is not usually very productive because they don't understand from where you're coming. And I guess the difference between that and like if you make a mistake working for someone else is that you've got someone that can cover your ass, whereas as an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur, it's all you. I mean, ultimately, everything is your responsibility. Whether you delegate that to somebody else or not, it's yours and you own it. And if you're in that spiral where you're doubting yourself and you're doubting your abilities, it can get dark quick. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely. I'm going to throw in just because it's in the back of my head. You said I'm going to go back to scream metal. Now, when you say scream metal, I'm thinking like Corn. Is that would that qualify?
A little, I mean, kind of, they're a bit more like rap rocky.
Okay. So give me a
But
scream metal band that I would know.
oh, that's a good question. So screamo was what I said, which is the
Okay.
intersection of screaming and emo. But
Okay.
like if you're looking for like a contemporary, you've got like I guess two bands that come to mind that I still listen to. One is called like Dance Gavin Dance, one's called Driveways. If you love emo, there's that. But like we played shows with like My Chemical Romance, The Used, Seosin, Kill Switch Engage, kind of a lot of the big ones from back in the day. So that's where we were
Okay.
at.
Well, so I none of those ring any bells. So the only now one, and I don't know if this fits in it's definitely not Screamo, but I don't know if it's Scream, is a band I was turned on to a long time ago from, I don't remember the TV show, but they were their music was in a show, and after researching it, it was actually in they've been in a lot of different movies too. Is a band called Demon Hunter. Have you heard of them?
I think so.
Okay, they're a Christian band, but like it's
Yeah.
not your worship music. No.
Yeah. I think I know. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down, and I think it qualifies
All right.
for sure.
So back to the dark place. I don't know why I'm all over the place. So I think we connected on LinkedIn because of the post on my episode with Bob Regnerus, where he was talking about his anxiety attack.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
I think so. I think that was kind of what brought it all together, because I'd made a post that, again, like I have a modest sized audience, but I made a post that did decently well, like being vulnerable about like almost checking myself into the ER because I was thought I was having heart stuff,
Right.
and I was having like the biggest panic attack I'd ever had, and that being a huge turning point in my journey. And that was, I mean, that was only last March, really.
So it was before you launched Visual Campfire.
No, I mean this would have been like March 2025. So
this March.
Yeah, because like this was kind of a side hustle sort of thing for a year while I was at the startup. Like I didn't know if my body could do it. I was still recovering. Like when after I got hurt, I dropped to like, I'm 6'1". I dropped to 135
Holy
pounds.
cow.
137 actually, but I'd been in CrossFit. I was 185. I was like, pretty active and big, and lost 50 pounds of muscle and really everything. I was a stick. And so, I'd been, in long-term rehab for 5 years, not knowing if I was going to be able to do it. And then really just got to a point where I was like, I gotta take this risk. I gotta see if I can do it. I gotta see if my body can hold up, because I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm tired of not, like, I was good in my role as a, startup CMO, but like when we're operating in our zone of excellence, it's a whole different thing. And I wasn't happy just being good. Like if I'm going to spend my time here doing anything, I want to try to really be great at it. And we all have innate gifts. And like one of mine has been the ability to sit with other people and their stories and bring those to light in a way that like honors them and inspires others and potentially does something good in the world. I do a lot of corporate work, so it's not all like feel good, but even if I can like help a business I believe in connect with new customers and new audiences and tell their story and highlight their team in a way that helps them achieve goals, like I'm satisfied with that.
This anxiety attack that you're referencing then just happened like 3 months ago.
It was like 3 months ago. Yeah, 3.5 months ago. So,
and the story Bob shared, I don't know if you listened to the episode, but the story he shared was like he didn't know that he was having an anxiety attack, and once he diagnosed that or was diagnosed with that, he made the comment that your body is going to shut you down if you don't get out of that anxiety space. Like it's not optional. You're either gonna choose to leave the anxious space, or your body's going to make you. Did you realize that you were in an anxious space before you had that attack?
I knew I was, because I'd taken on a series of incredibly challenging projects, but I didn't know like how. It's like when you're in a storm, like you could see the storm and it, but you don't always know like if you got a leak somewhere. And so I knew I was in the storm, but I didn't quite know that I had a bunch of leaks and that the boat was taking on water. And so that makes any sense.
No, it does. It's incredibly hard. I don't want to say impossible, but it's incredibly hard to self-diagnose, to really see yourself as you are. Getting caught up in your own head. In my experience, it takes others to help you sort through that. I remember like the last time I had anxiety that it actually had physical manifestations was a couple of years ago. And I did identify that I was like, okay, something's wrong because I'm feeling this way, but I wasn't real clear on what was causing it. And it turned out that it was a problem I was trying to solve, but I was terribly unsuccessful at it. And actually, I would say was probably being counterproductive. So I was going backwards in trying to solve this problem. And what I realized is that I had this belief that I couldn't quit, and I don't really know where it comes from. If it was something I learned or it's just part of who I am. I relayed the story about when I was training to be a private pilot. About halfway through the training, I realized that I didn't want to do this anymore. I didn't want to fly. It was too stressful to me. I was good at it, but I didn't like it. To me, it was equating like driving in Dallas rush hour traffic times 3. It just stresses you out, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I knew I wasn't going to do it, but I couldn't quit. And so I continued with my training, finished my training, got my license. I took one flight as a private pilot. I took my uncle to Elk City, America.
Okay.
And that's it. I haven't flown in over 2 years since that time. And I tell that story to say, though, but that's the level of I can't quit that I've got in my head, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was working on this business problem, even though it was evident that I was not being productive, it was my instinct, my belief was to just hold on to that rope, don't quit. And it was something that in my entrepreneurial journey had definitely served me well. Like, as an entrepreneur, if you quit easily, you're not going to be successful. It's just the bottom line. And so it worked for me until it didn't. And what I had to do was let go of that rope and let someone else solve the problem. And it wasn't a matter of, I don't think they can do it or I don't trust them to do it. It was that it had been my responsibility and it had been my problem to solve. And it was really hard for me to turn loose of the rope. And I had this anxiety. I mean, I was just miserable. I was irritable. And I'm like, why am I feeling this way? And I couldn't figure it out. But after I worked with my leadership team on this and they said, why don't we let someone else try? And I let go of the rope and I'm like, holy shit, that was what was causing, all of this anxiety. Right.
Yeah.
I'm just sharing that story. I don't know if that resonates with you at all.
No, it totally does. Ours is very similar in a slightly different context. Like mine was, I told myself when I started this, I'm going to say yes to everything that comes my way so that I can, yeah. And my rationale was so I can get my laps back in with the camera, with producing. There's a lot I got better at while I was away. And then there's some stuff that I got worse at, just kind of the, just production habits, processes, SOPs, kind of those things. And then even just time out with the camera. And so I was kind of in this idea of I need to do it all and I need to say yes to all of it. So I said yes to some stuff that, I don't regret it. I'm grateful. I needed to learn those lessons, but ultimately the lesson was that you got to say no. And so I've been practicing that this year. It's been hard. I just declined something last Friday and I was like, I kind of want that money.
Right.
I really wouldn't mind it. I could do it. I could do a good job at it. But that doesn't, I could tell even just little stuff. I never want to speak in a disparaging way because sometimes clients that aren't good clients just aren't good clients for me. That doesn't mean they're not great people or great clients for somebody else. There's just different styles and vibes and kind of all of that. So this potential person could very well be an incredible, well-paying client for somebody else, but the way that they wanted to do things and the way that they communicated and all of that, I was just like, you know what, this is not how I do business and this is not how I work. So I'm going to say no to this money and I'm going to recommend them to somebody that I think could do a great job for them and move on. And so, a lot of my anxiety came from saying yes to situations that, again, great people, great stuff all around, but it wasn't the right thing.
So how did you feel after you told them no?
A lot of things. Isn't entrepreneurship the whole gamut of the human experience where you're like, this is awesome, this is great, holy shit, this is terrifying, I'm so good at this, oh my god, I'm so bad at this, and so in some ways I felt good and felt empowered because I am integrating the lessons that I need to, and then in other ways I felt fearful of okay, I just missed some money, and then yesterday another deal closed that is with somebody that I gel with really well. We've got, we had a decent sized successful project together last year that helped exceed the goals for the project. So they're a great fit. And then ultimately, like, I can, until I scale my business, I'm pretty core to everything that we do. So that means that when my attention's diverted elsewhere, it's not, where it needs to be. So I've got enough projects in the pipeline to, hit my goals this quarter. And it's with people that I want, if I could wave a magic wand and get 10 more of them, I would. And so, because that's something they don't tell you, is like, if you say yes to a bunch of your non-ideal clients, you're probably going to get more of those. So you got to start saying yes to your ideal clients. And if you don't have the emotional or creative or even just like physical bandwidth for it, and you don't bring, your A+ game to that, like, you may not be attracting the right people. So yeah, it felt good after that other job landed, especially.
I would say, as an entrepreneur, one that is passionate about what they do, that is a creative and driven by passion, which is usually some form of helping others. If you don't know how to say no, let me phrase it this way. I think the ability to say no is one of the most powerful lessons you can learn. It's funny that when I started my business, I actually bought a franchise. There were accounting franchises, 3 at the time. I don't think any exist anymore. But I remember during the trainer who was a franchisee, someone had asked about, well, what if we changed this? And he said, every time you change the process, you're taking money out of your pocket. He said, just do this and do it 100 times, right? And somewhere along the way, I forgot that lesson. And I got way spread out doing way too many different things for way too many different people, to the point where we actually had to intentionally shrink about 9 or 10 years ago, maybe, somewhere in there. And we had to shrink the business 20%. We had to let things go, sell things, like, just, and as an entrepreneur, that felt awful, like, going backwards. But I had built this unstable foundation, right? And when we retooled, it was like, okay, we're going to do this one thing, and that's it. And we have kind of expanded it a little bit, and then we've narrowed it a little bit. But I think what your experience is one that we all experience probably multiple times. And the better we can get at saying no and being very clear on what it is that we want to do and that we're good at and that solves a problem and is worth money, the better off we're going to be.
Absolutely. That's been the panic attack inducing lesson that I've been learning, most certainly, and still going through it, right? Like, when I started Campfire, I was like, well, I've got all this marketing experience. Like, maybe we do, maybe it's video plus we do all the other marketing stuff, all the ads, all this, that, and the other. And in reality, the video stuff is what keeps people coming back. I mean, I love deploying, I love being a part of people's ads deployment. This is kind of like a self brag, but it fits within the story, so I'll drop it. But like, I had an agency hire me to make a bunch of video ads for their client. And this was the first time ever in the client's history that they hit a wait list for enrollment for their school district because the ad deployments did so well. So do I necessarily need to be the person managing all of that? Probably not. It's looking like I need to be the person that, like, conceptualizes and executes on the creative, and connects with the stories that we believe are going to resonate with people, and help with the strategy there, and then let other people do that. So I'm, I'm in the midst of also kind of redefining my business and saying, maybe I just need to be video production only. I'll probably have like a little consultancy on the side. Like I have some startups that I help with their fundraising stories and their decks and all that fun stuff. And I enjoy it. And it's nice having some work that doesn't involve my physical labor. Cause like when you're
Right.
on set, I can hire for all of that stuff, but that's cuts
Right.
into margins and I like doing it and all of that. But like when you're on set, it's very physical. And I know more than anybody, if you get hurt, you're screwed. Like my cinematographer broke his foot and he's going to have to get surgery. And it's like, it's a scary thing for him. And so I'm going to move him into an editing position for me
That's
for a
good.
while he's great at that. But like, so it's nice kind of as an entrepreneur too, you have to be thinking like, okay, how is this sustainable? Like 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and the AI conversation is a whole other can of worms. But I think just like mechanically, I'm in the process of, okay, I need to have Campfire be solely focused on creating people's stories, telling those and doing that through video, and then figure out, okay, how do I keep monetizing some of the marketing background in a way that I can just do computer work and have some revenue streams there. But from an entity perspective, it seems like a lack of focus there has not been good for my business.
It never is. And you come from a robust background where you have a lot of skills and you know how they all fit together. And so it's tempting to do things, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something, right?
That is true.
In my book, I talk about the Pareto principle. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, the 80-20.
And I think that is one of the largest challenges entrepreneurs, especially solopreneurs, but it affects all entrepreneurs and it really it goes to the point you're making at the business level is, what are you really good at? What is the 20% of your efforts that produce 80% of your results, or the 20% of your clients that produce 80% of your revenue or profit? Maybe not revenue, but profit. And as an entrepreneur, you're sitting there, well, you can do it all. You can shoot, you can edit, you can write copy, you can deploy the ads, like you can do all of this stuff. So what is it that you think you are most valuable at? What it produces the most value for others that you do? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I know. I mean, realistically, it's the human element of the story. It is figuring out who on the front end, like, who is this for? Who does this provide value for? And then what part of you and your story is so compelling that when we put that out into the world and get that in front of the right people, it's going to have a multiplier effect. And so that, I don't know how, where that like kind of falls into the stratification of all of it. But the reality is it does go back to that story component of like, because I really believe in honoring the audience. Like, we are inundated in content. Like, every day we're making millions of decisions on what we're going to consume and why. And like, in a world where everyone wants to go viral, like half the time I'm like, why? Like, just because 1.5 million people or 1 billion people see your stuff, it doesn't always work out. Like, some of my most like lucrative LinkedIn posts have had 2 or 3 people see them, but the right person saw it, and it turned into the biggest deal I've had all year. And so for me, I think the thing that I'm best at is kind of capturing the messaging and the audience and kind of the magic of the, on people on one end of it and the need of the people on the other, and saying, okay, like, where does your unique place in the world, your unique solution, your unique perspective or whatever, where does that intersect with the people that you really want to get this message and their pain points and the things that are going to actually add value to their lives. And let's capture that and put the best of you out into the light in front of the right people, and let the stories go from there. So I think that's probably what I'm best at.
That whether you realize it or not, you have just enunciated a very powerful statement, because what you just defined is sorely lacking in the marketplace. I really truly believe that. And it's not just video, it is marketing in general. And I bag on marketing a lot on this show, and I probably shouldn't, because I love our marketing clients, and I'm not trying to disparage the industry, because there's a lot of very talented people, and a lot of people in videography that are talented. And it's not about the talent. Yeah, the talent has to be there, but it's a depth of understanding of what problem you're solving and what value you bring to the table. And the way you described it, of like understanding their uniqueness and where it intersects with the people that they want to talk to, that's what's missing.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. I hope you can lean into that, because I really think that's where the power is. I mean, like, if you're good at that, there is a huge demand for it.
Okay. And thankfully that's something that I've been fortunate to have results behind, whether it's, fundraising numbers of, hey, like, if we capture this story and put it in front of the people that you want to support you, they're going to want to give, they're going to want to participate in this organization because, of just how amazing, like, this is something I can brag on. We have a world-class child advocacy center here in Oklahoma City. And I got to hang out with the team, and I was like, gosh, if the world could just see how incredible and passionate, like, all of the staff is, if they could see who these people are behind the scenes, they would be blown away. And so we did, an entire piece behind that. And it exceeded expectations. And, it wasn't my work is usually never the be all end all, because I think that at the end of the day, there's a bunch of people involved in the success of these stories and organizations. But if I can give a window into whatever unique magic they have, then I think it makes people want to participate, whether that's volunteering or giving or buying or whatever. And so, I've been fortunate the past year and a half to have a lot of those wins under my belt, where it's like, let's just show it sounds reductive, but it's like, show the right stuff to the right people and let them make the choice.
Yeah. And with a nonprofit, I think it's easier to find the passion behind the organization than it is with a for-profit, but there are businesses out there that are passion driven and are not dissimilar to a nonprofit, in the sense that they have a passion for helping people and solving their problems, and they have solutions, and you telling that story to help the people that need to hear about the solution is the same thing, right? It just has a business layer, a profit motive on top of it, but the process is the same, right?
Yeah. And like, I think people get trapped in this idea that like profit is a bad word, or that like being in business is somehow like, I'm going to kind of like wax poetic, but it's somehow like extractionary or something, when in reality, like, we've all got to eat, we've all got to make money. Like, I think that my dentist should make a great living? Absolutely. I really like my teeth.
Yes.
We should all like our teeth, and people should deserve to be able to like live dignified lives providing these services. So like, I don't think profit's a bad word. I don't think making money is a bad word. And like, if I had to choose between a dentist that's really passionate about it and loves what they do and really takes it seriously versus somebody that's just like showing up to make good money, I'm going to take the person that loves it all day, every day. And I use that specifically. I've got a dentist client, and it's like, is my dental content going to go viral? Probably not. Like, there may be an edge in there that does something interesting, but at the end of the day, like, especially in these like high like cost per click sectors, if you have like organic content that you can run, certain targeted ads to, and you have an organic strategy that does decently well within, a confined space, and then you can put that in front of people, let that passion show, and then be like, because, for this one, these people are amazing at dealing with dental anxiety. That's one of the things they love. Every one of their staff, like I got to interview a bunch of their staff to figure out, what makes them unique and what's cool about them. And then we cross-reference that against like Google reviews and say like, what are your kind of highest things there? Because that's where you can find the magic too, is let other people do the talking, and we just facilitate the story, right? Like, that you did that with me. You helped me figure out something about my story that I didn't know, but once I was prompted, I could articulate. Yes. And that's why people come to me. So we do that for other people. And like, for them, easing dental anxiety is something that they're amazing at. And so it's like, let's lean into that. Like, let's tell stories about people that felt, really either fearful or about coming to the dentist or negative about their smile. And then let's show what it was like after. And that's a no-brainer. Yeah, and so kind of back to kind of land that plane, so to speak, is like, in profit-driven sectors, there's a lot of people that really love what they do and really care a lot about it. And we should want them to be making great money 100%. So that they can continue to educate and learn and grow and expand and serve more people and help more people.
Yeah. And I would say the bulk of small business owners are that way. Corporate America, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Like they don't. I don't think you could take any publicly traded company of any size that really cares. But that's fine. Like, let them do their thing.
I have strong opinions about scaling, because it's like, I've seen it from the inside and the outside enough to where it's like, I think my like one kind of pushback is like, I think that people inside of those orgs care. I think all companies, I don't know where it is, but I think there's an inflection point where it becomes a machine. Mm-hmm. And to feed that machine, there has to be sacrifices that are made to the machine. And oftentimes it is that like extra 10% of caring, or that extra, whatever human touch, or that extra, like, we got to reduce headcount because if I don't, and it's really easy to rationalize, right? Because it's like, if you don't make that decision and the company goes under, then all of a sudden everyone else there that depends on you for a paycheck isn't able to do that. So, I mean, I think there's just a point of scale in which, the machine has to be fed. And so I think that's also, as a very small business owner, I think about a lot of like, what kind of business do I run? Do I ever want to be a big agency? I don't think I do, because I think I can get everything that I want out of life without having to get to that point of sacrifice. But who knows? This is recorded, sure, so we'll see if I eat my words in years.
No, I think where it could happen unintentionally, like you if you're not careful, you could grow to that. But I think what you're saying is so important for entrepreneurs to understand, is that the business serves them, not the other way around. And you have to be intentional about creating the business that you want. Otherwise, it becomes something that you don't want and you serve it. Mm-hmm. And that's not where you want to be.
Yeah.
Working harder, making less money, and being unfulfilled. That's not what you want.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
It is. I was sitting in a room of about 50 entrepreneurs, And Vern Harnish, author of Scaling Up and The Rockefeller Habits, was the speaker. And he asked this group who all had businesses that, were doing at least $1 million in revenue. And he said, how many of you could cut your business in size radically, maybe by half, and you'd make more money and you'd work less? And a huge percentage of the hands went up. But
Wow.
so many of us, myself included, get sucked into that illusion of growth for growth's sake without really having any destination in mind. And all of a sudden, or over time, it becomes this beast you have to sacrifice to.
Yeah.
If you want to continue that analogy. Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you see, that's where I think you see a lot of like well-intentioned people start to lose some of that like humanity that made them well-intentioned in the first place. Because again, there's so many ways that once you're at that size and that scale, it's really easy to rationalize every decision you've got to make to keep growing. And you lose some of that, like that human touch. So
why are you here? Yeah. Like when we did the work in our company to restructure about 8 years ago, it was, what is the why of the business and why do we exist? I mean, and our why, our mission, if you will, is to enhance the lives of our clients and team. That's it. If we're not doing that, we have no business being here. Like, if we're not making people's lives better, then pack up and go home and go do something else somewhere else. And that's got to be something that you come back periodically and touch to say, okay, why are we doing this? Is this serving our purpose? If it's not, get rid of it.
Yeah. And like having that purpose be defined is so important. And it's hard to do. Like, it's easy to want to be everything for everybody, especially me, like, recovering people pleaser. And
Yes.
so and we want to excel and we want to do all of that. And so I've just recently kind of, even as you're talking about it, I'm like, okay, could I encapsulate my purpose? Like my buddy, Adam Corey, he's a life coach, business coach, and he's got this amazing program that's helped me a lot because it's only recently that I've really been able to define it. And like, so when it's like, okay, if I had to come up with it right now, what would it be? And for me, it's to take amazing stories out of the dark and put them into the light. And that's vague enough and broad enough that it can be your documentary work, done some work on the Syrian border covering the refugee crisis conflict, back in 2016, I think that was, and all that. But it can also be your enterprise startup that makes that has this incredible level of intelligence around the solutions they offer to the market and how those really matter to other people. So like an amazing story all comes back to, again, to me, like that human element, because I just love getting to like, when you hear brilliant people talk about stuff they're passionate about, it's so cool, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. And to your point about people pleasing, your example of telling that prospect no and referring them to somebody else that you thought would be a better fit for them is helping them. And that's one of the things that I had to figure out is like, I want to help people, but I can't help everybody.
Yeah.
Just in the limitation of time capacity, sure, but like I'm not the right person for everybody. Like and Core is not the right for everybody. But I can still help them by pointing them in the right direction, or having them gain clarity on what it is that they really need. Because a lot of times people don't know what they need; they just have symptoms, and it's like they come to the doctor and I'm like, I've got these symptoms. I don't have enough money in the bank. I can't predict when the cash flow is going to come in. It's chicken or feathers, or I'm working too much, or I'm not getting enough business. I'm not working enough. those are just symptoms. So, if I can help them diagnose really what their underlying condition is, even though I can't help them, I've given them value. I've helped them.
I love that. And like, how do you, I have my thoughts, but I don't want to like lead the witness. How do you do that? How do you gain that skill set in your particular sector to even be able to be a guide like that?
Well, mostly it's experience.
Yeah.
Like over time, like a physician, like if they present with certain symptoms, you're like, well, it's 10% that it could be this, but 90% of the time it's going to be that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I think that's the easy part. In my mind, the harder part is getting the patient, if you will, to understand the underlying condition. Like you're focusing on the wrong things. Like you think it's this, it's not this, it's that.
I think I mean, in a lot of ways, what you're describing is kind of core to the same problem that that I shared at the beginning. Mindset's also another big buzzword now that Instagram and TikTok. Motivation is huge, but like is mindset. Like you're describing like, hey, I can tell you all the stuff in the world, but if you don't wrap your mind around it in a way that is either, a sense of humility or, self-inquisition or whatever, like it's not going to matter. You can tell, like a doctor could tell you like, hey, you need to like eat better and go exercise. But unless you actually like do that and accept that, it's not going to happen anyway. So
exactly.
I think you answered in some ways exactly what I was expecting, which was the experience component. And then the surprising thing for me was, like it's more being able to, it's being able to communicate. Here's actually where you think it is versus where you want it to be. And now you have to take that work back, that inner work back, and integrate that into who you are as a person. Because like, maybe some people can do this, but like, I can't separate my entrepreneurship journey from like my own mental health journey,
No, they're not separate. And I mean, that's, I have a whole nother show called the Chris Project, where we discuss mental health of entrepreneurs and mindset and mental wellness. And, I could go on and on about that, but
Okay.
The reality is most entrepreneurs, especially men, use the business as a coping mechanism for their mental health, like that, to keep from having to deal with the self-work. They use the business as a proxy, and it's usually disastrous.
Sounds like it. Yeah. That's where we get into this whole other like unpacking of like, I saw this cool, it's like this creative project they do in nature. And it's like basically just like creatives doing a podcast under trees or in forests. And like one of them said, like the more I heal, the less I want to achieve. And it's not like not from I want to be lazy and not do anything perspective, but it's like the more I've noticed that too, is like the more that I heal emotionally and spiritually, the more I have to realize like, oh crap, I was like driven by this affirmation of being like, they're going to see me and they're going to be wrong about all the times I was bullied or this or that or the other. When in reality, like, now it's like, okay, where's my motivation coming from? Because rather than being motivated out of spite or this negative self-worth that my success or whatever is validated by, the projection online or the status of my business or whatever, like what actually motivates me from a place of like wholeness and fullness rather than like a sense of lack or something.
100%. No, you nailed it. I mean, most entrepreneurs start a business to fix themselves without even realizing that's what they're doing. They'll do it. They'll define it in terms of like, I want more freedom. I want more financial reward. I want to get paid for what I do, what I build. You know, they'll say all these things, but in reality, what they're trying to do at the end of the day is fix themselves. They don't realize it. I didn't realize it. I had no, I mean, it took me decades to figure that out.
It's wild. It's a never-ending journey, isn't it?
Oh, dude, there's no journey like the entrepreneurial journey. There really isn't. There really isn't. I feel like we could talk for hours, Will. Unfortunately, we are at time's end.
Copy that. Yeah, just looked up. It's been an hour. That was fast.
It has. Making it. So how do people find out more about Visual Campfire and or Will Dickinson?
Yeah, so right now I'm mainly focused on my personal brand on LinkedIn. So if you look up William Dickinson on LinkedIn, I still have hair in my headshot, so I'm going to update those next week.
I like the bald look.
Thank you. It's a sidebar. I mean, people, here's my message to people: if you're balding and losing your hair, just shave it. I 100%. Wish I had done it years later or years sooner. People have been. I should have just ripped off that Band-Aid.
It looks badass. Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So yeah, William Dickinson on LinkedIn. The Visual Campfire Instagram and LinkedIn are both sorely neglected at the moment, but it's one thing at a time. And right now, in the age of personal brand, I intend to be, the face of Campfire and all of that. And so I figure I want to build out that ecosystem, my own kind of digital space first, and then I'll start kind of picking up the business pages and stuff sooner. But I really want to have a personal touch.
We already determined your moniker. It's the Video Ranger.
The Video Ranger.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to carry that one home with me. So thank you for that.
About that one.
So LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me now. If you want to see pictures of my cats and my kids and stuff, I've got William Roy Dickinson on Instagram. I take a lot of nature photography. I love doing that. So that's kind of a hobby of mine.
Nice. Well, listeners will have those links in the show notes. If you like what you've heard, please rate the podcast, share the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. If you don't like what you've heard, shoot us a message and tell us what you'd like to hear, and we'll replace Will.
Nice.
Until then, ta-ta for now.